sneeze to announce the next speaker. It's a little different when I know people. They go to speak. So when I see the intro, I'm going to underline a few things related to Trent here. So Trent Cotton, VP of Talent and Culture at Hatchworks.ai, a bold, now underline that word, a bold voice in the human capital space. Trent challenges the status quo, another underlying moment, with sharp insights of HR analytics, AI, and agile recruiting. He's the author of Sprint Recruiting and High Performance Recruiting and host of the Human Capitalist podcast. With great pleasure, I bring to your attention Trent Cotton. Trent, take it away. Don't hear him. I don't hear you.
So let's jump right into that. I appreciate the stellar introduction, and I always like to do a little bit different. I like to shock people. So if you are easily offended, this is probably not going to be the presentation for you. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize if I drop a couple of bad words. It's been a fun week, but thank God we have a long weekend. Today I want to talk about when corporate ventriloquism fails. And our journey today, for anyone that knows me, knows that I always start grounded in the data. We're going to discuss some of the fears that I hear a lot whenever I'm consulting with clients who have questions about employer branding. Then we get into the reality and show a little bit of what's going on out in the internet world whenever it comes to employer branding. And then I want to give you a plan that you should be able to put into practice within 24 hours of hearing this. So let's get into the data. I love data. It's always interesting. And my major is in marketing. So I've always kind of had a bent toward employee marketing and branding. But one of the first things is that marketing charts reveal that only 40% of consumers trust information from their companies or brands. That, along with an HBR article that highlighted that over 80% of consumers consider trust a deciding factor in their buying decisions, but only 34% of them trust the brands that they use. Whenever I read that, I was like, okay, that's kind of like a green stop sign. So if 80% of you are saying that trust is really important, why do only 34% of you buy from brands that you trust? And then a Gartner brand survey in 2019 said that 81% of customers refuse to do business with or buy from a brand that they just do not trust. And I think if all of us were to stop and think about it, I'm just going to say one word, and I think this will probably encapsulate what many of us feel and the hesitation that we have about trusting brands. Temu, you. If you are having a bad day, go on Reddit, go on Instagram, and just type in what I bought versus what I got from Temu. I promise you, you're going to have a good belly laugh, and it'll be a great end of the day. But what's happening is that a lot of the consumer behavior is affecting employer branding. And a lot of companies, believe it or not, they think that it's completely different. There is a lot of overlay there and a lot of influence. So if your employer branding sounds like corporate talk, you're going to miss the target. Why? Because you're going to be associated with brands, and we already know that only 34% of consumers buy from brands that they trust. I would dare say that it's probably only a little bit higher in terms of candidates actually going to work for a brand that they just feel like they cannot trust. So what I want to challenge everyone today is to give your employees the mic. I did a similar talk in person, and there was probably about 40 or 50 CHROs and talent leaders. And whenever I put a similar slide up, you could just almost feel the acid reflux in the room and the high cortisol levels. But I want to walk you through some of the fears that I hear whenever I bring this up. So the first is a loss of message control. And a lot of times this comes from marketing. You know, they do a really great job of putting together a brand, the colors, the theme, the DNA, all of this. And they are just afraid that if they give their employees free reign, then it's going to become a brand illusion, or even worse, there's going to be reputational damage. And it's what keeps a lot of marketing execs up night. And it's also what keeps a lot of HR professionals from really kind of pushing the envelope whenever it comes to employer branding. But the reality check is your employees already represent your brand. And another fact, they're already talking about your brand. So why not be part of that conversation and help them guide that conversation? And the real risk is not enabling them with the right brand training, guidelines, and guardrails. That's the real risk. So the next fear that I hear is legal and compliance. Most people know that I'm not your typical HR person. I got into HR because I hate it. One of the things I hated the most about HR, and still low-key kind of do, is whenever they go, well, according to legal and compliance. Okay. that's kind of an easy cop out, meaning I don't understand what you're asking me, so I'm just going to say it's not legally compliant. Now, companies worry that some internal grievances or proprietary information is going to get leaked out in the employer branding whenever you give the employee the mic. Again, it comes back to the guidance, it comes back to training, and they're really afraid of becoming the next viral Glassdoor, Instagram, you name it, social media trend. But the reality check is, and this is a hard truth, if you're afraid of the truth coming out, it has nothing to do with the employee post. It has everything to do with the culture behind it. And fear of the spotlight being on the employee, not the brand. I remember last year talking to a firm about this, and this was one of the CEO or the C suite, we'll just put it C suite. This was their biggest concern, is that the employee would be elevated at the expense of the brand. Okay, cool. Every time I get on stage and I'm talking about my role, I always try to make sure that whenever I'm delivering any kind of content, it's actionable and it's real. It's supported by data, it's supported by experience. And a lot of that experience lately, especially whenever it comes to AI, has been some of the things that we're doing at Hatchworks. I use case studies, I use pictures, I talk about problems that we're trying to overcome. By association, in that talk, full of HR people in the room, whenever they think Hatchworks AI, they're going to think me, right? So if your people are thriving publicly, your brand is also going to thrive. It's just the right kind of guilt by association. So I encourage you, celebrate that. Don't fear it. So let's go through the reality. This is the fun part. Employees want to tell the story of your brand. Some of them are just scared because they don't know where the guidelines are. They don't want to mess something up. Candidates are never going to trust. Candidates will trust more what employees share. All right. If you think about your recent Amazon purchase, I'd love a show of hands. How many of you went and read that? Now it's really cool, the AI summary of all of the reviews. But if you think about it 20 years ago, what do? We asked our friends and our family, what do you think about this product? Now we can actually go and see pictures, videos, unboxing videos. Candidates have now bringing that consumer mainstay over into evaluating employer brands. And then employee led branding humanizes the brand and it tells the story. And it's fun. I love this kind of stuff. But the trend. So let's talk about dollars, like hard dollars. The market for global influencers is projected to reach by the end of this year $33 billion just in the United States. Whenever you're looking at marketing budgets, it is forecasted to reach about $6.24 billion of the budget in all marketing in the United States is going to go toward influencers. Why? We saw this in the pandemic. A lot of these influencers just kind of exploded and they started attaching themselves to brands and, making a lot of money online, being a brand ambassador or an influencer. It makes sense because especially during the pandemic, we didn't know what to trust, but we trusted this person that we saw on TikTok every day talking about their makeup skills or talking about, whatever else you kind of get into. I just know makeup skills because my daughter at the time was like, well, this person says buy this makeup. Okay, cool. Trust her, don't trust me. But that to me signifies not just the intent, not just the interest, but now there's some hard dollars going into this influencer type of economy. And so, what would happen if we turned our employees into influencers? We're already paying them to work. What if we paid them just to go out and sell our brand and do it from an authentic point of view? So let's go through some of the examples of when it works. So I got to turn it off. I will drop the link to this in the chat so you can go and actually watch the video. I'm kind of glad because this guy is dancing to my humps, so it's probably not the best. So creating this, let me turn the music off. I'm a musician, so if I hear music, I'm doing the beat. But it's really interesting. So he pulls in these songs and he flops that dough around and like he'll do it down his neck. And to me, whenever I saw this, I was like, God, Papa John's really needs to they need to snag this guy. Some of his stuff went viral. And what it tells us in this video, without saying anything, okay, Papa John's is fun. And for a lot of frontline work, sometimes this is the only way to differentiate yourself. It's not glamorous work, but this guy is doing what he loves to do and he's having fun doing it. And it also embraces a lot of creativity. And also, too, apparently you need a lot of rhythm to be a very good pizza maker. So what did the brand do? I love this. I pulled this out. One of the users went in and said, hey, Papa John, this man needs to be one of your elite employees. He deserves it. And then the brand responded, just wait till y'all see what we're cooking up with our elite employees. So if you're not on Instagram, Reels, or TikTok, elite employees, that's a whole nother trend. Go check it out. It's absolutely hilarious. So they were actually playing into a trend while also furthering the brand. And to me, it is absolutely textbook for what you're supposed to do in leveling up your employer brand by giving your employees the mic. This is another one. Got to turn it off. But this is TikTok. And so they have a variety of different people coming in and basically talking about how they got into the company, what do they work on. This particular guy is a PhD intern, didn't know that those existed. But he talks about his intern experience and he talks about his passion for being on the cutting edge of technology and some of the problems that he's trying to solve. And what's really cool is that it's authentic. I mean, it's company sponsored, it's on their page, but he is not the best on camera. I'll be nice whenever I say that, but you can tell like he's speaking from his heart. And he talks about being on the edge of innovation and he speaks directly to college graduates. So he is niching down into an audience that obviously TikTok wants to evolve. So this is a fun little video. This is a this is a beauty company, and sorry. All right. So this is y'all hearing the reverb? Fix something. There we go. All right. So what they did, this is a beauty company. What they did is they brought their IT guys in and started asking them about products. So I think the first question is, what is a waterline or something like that? Again, I don't wear makeup, don't know a lot about it, but it was really funny to kind of watch them try to define it. And then, the host was getting tickled and correcting them. But what it says is that this is a fun place to work and it's okay not to know all the answers. They're actually not making fun of the person. They're actually just, kind of showing that IT people kind of know IT. They don't know a lot of other things whenever it comes to the products, but that the company values that everyone in the organization knows exactly what they do. Sheer Lux, I can't remember how this trend started, but there were a couple of employees that did some black and white videos wearing and showcasing their products, and the company truly leaned into it. In fact, they pay very few models. Most of the models are their actual employees. So, they've got product managers out there, doing glamour shots with, the products and marketing it from a very authentic and passionate point of view. And what they have been able to do is absolutely insane. So over 500,000 followers on Instagram, 600,000 on TikTok, and they have received almost 1 million likes on both of those platforms. And here's my company. We had a group. It was about 15 or 16 employees on a project, and it was a big project. It was tough. It was demanding, and the project ended, I think, end of January, February, and the team had gotten to be so close in the heat of battle. They decided on their own. All of them were going to take PTO. They were all going to meet down in Medellin, Colombia, and they got together to be able to kind of just celebrate the end of the project, but also get to really kind of hang out on a personal level. And they posted this picture in Slack, and it just absolutely warmed my heart. What does this picture say? This picture talks about diversity without saying we're diverse. We've got diversity of race, we've got diversity of age. Obviously, with the little countries, it shows that we've got people from Brazil, from India, from Costa Rica, from the US, of course. It just did absolutely amazing talking about our brand. And again, we didn't sanction this. We didn't say, hey, why don't you do this? Here's an idea. They did it all on their own. And whenever I posted this online, it got the most hits. And it talked about, a lot of the candidates would actually email me and say, hey, I really like this. Can I be part of the team? And, I just love what the story says and how it is able to bring the same type of talent. I want more people like this coming into the organization. All right, so let's get into the plan. Here's our journey. We're going to identify our influencers. We're going to convince marketing of the plan, give some guidance, monitor the results, and celebrate the win. So let's talk about the persona of a good employee influencer. One, you need to make sure that they already have a decent following on social media. With that is going to come some social media knowledge. Many of us that have got a pretty decent following, been doing this for a while, we know what to do and what not to do. It's kind of innate. We're also pretty connected in the different algorithm changes and how to make sure that our posts are actually hitting the right people. So you can train someone to do that. But if you're looking for a good quick start, I would recommend going and identifying people who've already got a pretty decent following. Also, too, with that, they're going to understand lighting. They're going to understand having the right kind of mic if you're doing any kind of talking. They're going to understand all of the different tools that are out there, like CapCut and Champ and Descript and all those things that they can go in and edit and really make the video their own while staying true to the brand. You also want to make sure that they have a little bit of tenure with the firm. You want them to be able to speak to it, not just, hey, you're 1 week and you got 20,000 followers. Here's a mic. Go talk about the brand. The reason that employee influencers work is because they are authentic and they're talking about their experience. So make sure that they have the experience. And then also, too, make sure that they understand the brand and make sure that they are creative, they're camera ready and eager to help. There was not at my current firm, but at previous firm, there was this one person that just really wanted to be a social media influencer for the organization. And I mean, I tried everything I could. And then finally, I was just like, you're not good on camera. Like, go and post things in written form. You have beautiful words. I love the way that you tell a story, but when that camera comes on, it's not your cup of tea. So if you're doing any kind of video work, make sure that the person presents well and is inviting. So convincing your marketing team of the data, that is always a fun part because most organizations have employer branding sitting under marketing. I have a love-hate relationship with that reporting structure. I prefer it almost to be in HR and reporting indirectly into marketing. But what I have found is that when you give them data and say, this is what we want to do, and here is why, here's how it's going to benefit you, they're a little bit more apt to loosen the reins. So a benchmark report in 2025 showed that 52% of organizations identified increased brand awareness as the primary benefit of their employee advocacy programs. There was another stat that I read that was crazy. It said that 47% of consumers actually go and look at employee reviews before buying from an organization. And that kind of made me appreciate Glassdoor a little bit more. LinkedIn reports that companies with high number of employees sharing quality content are 58% more likely to attract talent. The trust barometer indicated that people who hold trust in my employer, with 75% globally expressing the sentiment. It also talks about, this is why leveraging those employee influencers is really going to help the marketing plan. So, you know how it is working with other departments. We do this every day as talent leaders and as HR people. We have great ideas, and then we go to the line of business and make it their idea and let them celebrate the win. You need to do that with marketing as well. And then provide some guidance. So, of course, sit down, do some training, talk to them about the branding colors, the branding story. Why do we want to stick to this? So explain the why, not just follow these rules. Also, create a repository of pre-approved content that they can pull from. So background images, logos, the color schemes. I also found that sometimes this pulls employee influencers that I didn't necessarily think were influencers. It pulls them out of the shadows because they like to work within some confines, right? And so whenever you give them, hey, here's a whole bunch of different ideas, here's some things that you can use, it really gives them that safety to be very creative within the box that they prefer to work in. And then engage them in marketing rollouts. You're releasing a new product, you're updating a new product, you've got some kind of initiative going on in the community. Engage that group to go and help you tell the story, expand that marketing reach. And also, too, that's another way to get marketing on board, is to say, hey, you're going to get some free advertising. And then make sure, too, that you understand that there are some influencers. I'm one of them. You're going to give me a box, and I'm going to be okay with that box, but I'm going to color an inch outside of it, because that's just who I am. You need to understand that there are going to be influencers out there that do that. And the reason that they're successful as an influencer is because they never stay in the box. And make sure that you monitor, do some before and after metrics. So, how many applicants did you get on average per month before you started using these employee influencers? Look at the marketing statistics. Was there a bump in number of visits? Did some of the stuff go viral? Make sure that you keep your employee influencers activated, and most of them are competitive. Play on that. Have a leaderboard, not from a who's better, who's not, but from a, Anna, this last post that you did, it was killer. Like, you got 40,000 views on that. Bring the rest of the influencers in and say, hey, let's talk about, why did this work? How can we replicate that? So it creates a little bit of competition, but it also creates an great opportunity for for mentorship among your influencers. And then stick to the brand plan, but don't be heavy-handed. Again, draw the box, let them color about an inch outside. And the biggest thing is celebrate the win. Even early on, if it's if you've got one influencer who averages 3,000 or 4,000 impressions and they do something and 10 or 12,000 impressions on LinkedIn happen as a result of something that they're doing for employer branding, celebrate it throughout the company. Put them up, put them front and center. You'll be very surprised at how many times that will inspire others to come out of the shadows. And then all you're doing is expanding your employer branding footprint. So, hopefully, if I have done a good job as a lawyer, I have convinced you that the way of the future for employer branding is employees equal influencers. So, if you have any questions, definitely kind of throw them out there. I'm going to get to my other screen so I can see questions, but I'll leave that QR code up. I talk a lot, I write a lot, I do a lot of videos, so that has got everything out there. Okay. All right. What is the optimal strategy for combining ambassador support with corporate brand? Okay. How to combine it. I think you don't, there's not really a formula that I would follow. I like to let the influencers choose. There are some that actually prefer more talking about the product. That's kind of where they feel safe. They don't want to talk about their personal experiences. You have others that all they want to do is talk about their personal experiences at the organization and why they're proud and what their team has accomplished. They don't really want to get into a product. I think that if you have enough EIs in your particular group, it's probably going to be a 50-50 split. So just let it kind of fall naturally along that fault line. If you have a large organization, you can have probably 10, I think is a good manageable amount. If you have a smaller organization, maybe just two or three that are really good. And yeah, there's not an ideal number. I've worked with large groups, I've worked with small groups, and there were benefits and negatives to both sides of it. I would start small and then see if it's getting you some metric support showing, hey, yeah, we're ready to go. We're marketing's on board, and then try to expand it. So what's the recipe to keep people on brand without clipping their creative wings and input? You got to sell them on the why. And if you go and you look at influencers, okay, if they're pushing a product, a lot of times they've got the branding somewhere in the background, or they're wearing a shirt, or they're doing something like that. So they still have their creative juices going and their creative will, their creative voice, while also pushing the brand. I think that's something that every organization is really going to have to kind of navigate through. And it's a lot of trial and error. That's why I think that if you do decide to go this, and I really hope that you do, and you've got a band of EIs, I would have a monthly check-in with them. Hey, what's working, what's not? What are the feedback you're getting? Are you being trolled? That's something I didn't cover, but you need to teach them, how do you deal with people who are trolling? So I think that that's something that you're just going to have to learn and develop, and you're going to have to write the script as you're producing the play. Great questions.